Oh yes, it is the sound teenagers dread, the alarm clock piercing through their much-needed adolescent slumber. Or for a parent, well, it signals the start of that daily battle to get your child out of bed and to school. But it's not teenagers' faults. Not according to research that shows that teenagers, their body clocks are wired up to stay up later and sleep in later. They start functioning properly, apparently, 2 hours later than adults. Researchers at the University of Oxford are planning to conduct a trial of students in 100 schools to see if starting classes at 10 a.m. will actually help improve their grades. Well, an absolutely fascinating topic to discuss and throw around for the next few minutes. Dr. Christopher-James Harvey is the programme coordinator of sleep medicine at Oxford University, and working on this study here in the studio is Guy Holloway, the headmaster at Hampton Court House, a school introducing later starting times. Thanks both of you for being with us. Let's head to Oxford first of all. I'm sort of thinking you could have saved me and millions of others, parents, the absolute headache every morning if you'd got on with this research a little earlier. So they're scientifically programmed to do this, are they? Not just lazy?
No, definitely not. There's quite a lot of evidence to show that teenagers' natural rhythms are delayed, and it starts from about the age of 10 up until about the age of 20, where you are naturally programmed to stay up later and find it much more difficult to get up early. And then it begins to normalise again as we age, and it's quite a predictable pattern across the lifespan.
Scientifically, what do you think is actually going on?
Well, the mechanisms are quite complicated and quite difficult to pin down. But the most interesting thing about this group is the uniformity within the change. It happens to the vast majority of adolescents.
And it's interesting, I mean, just how stark the impact can be, because I was reading the details of your research, and you were saying for an ordinary teenager, if they get up at 7 o'clock, that's for, like you and me, getting up at 5 o'clock. It is that dramatic, is it?
Yes, it definitely is. And just as a way of example, I was up at 5 this morning because there's been quite a lot of interest in this story, and have felt horribly hungover all day.
Well, that explains an awful lot in terms of what's going on in school. Guy, I mean, I mentioned there in the introduction, your school is planning to introduce later times. Tell me a little more about what you're planning to do.
Yes, well, we are opening a sixth form which opens next September, and in fact our lessons are starting after lunch.
After lunch?
They are indeed, because we want, I as head would like all of the students in my care, certainly the older adolescents, to enjoy 9 hours sleep a night. And it's my view, I think it's the view of many, that very few teenagers today get the required amount of sleep.
As a teacher, as opposed to a scientist, I mean, have you seen this at first hand, sitting in front of you at 9 o'clock? I mean, what is happening with that age group of people generally?
Matthew, we've all seen it. We've all seen primary school children come skipping into school, and then suddenly we have a nation of teenagers who are morose and sometimes sullen. Well, that's very unkind. The truth really is that they are profoundly underslept, and in fact they are lacking 2 to 3 hours sleep a night. So by the time a student, an A-level student for example, gets to Thursday or Friday, they are 10, 11 hours underslept. And of course this has a consequence for...
And that's with lots of things happening socially, isn't it? I mean, you have all the technology that people are worried about now in terms of the effect on sleep, just the hours they are getting. But this also is adding to exactly the same story. Do you notice as a teacher that after a couple of hours it begins to get better?
Well, indeed. I mean, I think the point is that motivated students, they can work in the morning, but they are doing so by overriding nature, overriding their circadian rhythms, and that is unhealthy.
Chris, I was interested in part of the research, which is the whole notion of people getting out of bed and struggling is one thing, but also you notice that teenagers want to go to bed later as well, and you're saying that is all part of the same thing. That's interesting, isn't it?
Yes, there is this idea that if you just took their computers off them, their phones or iPads, whatever, and forced them to go to bed earlier, that they would get the sleep that they need. But the reason they're not getting the sleep that they need isn't because they are forcing themselves to stay up. It's because they're naturally programmed to stay up that late. And as Guy points out, this then leads to an accumulated sleep debt, a mass of sleep deprivation, which is very bad for performance.
So it makes total logical sense to correlate the hours of school to those sorts of scientific rhythmic patterns, doesn't it?
Yes, exactly. Don't try and put a round peg in a square hole, you know, change the shape of the hole.
Guy, coming back to you, I mean, just in terms of making this happen, I mean, teenagers often think that it is all about them. If you're trying to revolve the whole timetable and the way the day works for parents, for teachers, it really does begin to look like life revolves around them. I mean, what are parents saying to you when you're talking about totally altering the way the day works?
Yes. I mean, the interesting feedback has been from parents who have had older children who perhaps are now at university or have left university. And so when their younger children come through, they remember those years, and the impact of lack of sleep on family life is poor communication, sometimes poor mental health, depression, and a lack of optimal
But it is quite a lot of
functioning.
disruption for everyone else. I mean, I mentioned that it was 16-year-olds. Why not do it a little earlier? Because we were hearing there, it's the start of teenage years, so for much earlier, 13, 14, you could do it even at that age.
One could, but as the scientists explained, the peak is about the age of 20, and therefore it is the A-level students who are most affected, in our view, by the shift.
Well, Guy, thank you so much for coming and explaining what your school is doing. Thank you, Chris, for explaining that research that is absolutely fascinating many, many people. Thanks to both of you.